The scent of aged ink and damp stone hung heavy in the Suzhou air, a perfume unique to the serene Bamboo Academy. Spring was tentative, plum blossoms scattering like pale confetti on the mossy paths between ancient courtyards, yet a chill lingered beneath the budding warmth. Inside his modest studio, Lin Mo watched a young student's brush tremble above the rice paper. "Breathe, Xiao Wen," he murmured, his voice as soft as the whisper of bamboo leaves outside. "The energy, the qi, flows from your center through your arm into the brush. Feel it before the ink touches the paper." Lin Mo, barely into his 40s, but seeming older in his simple, dark Changshan, often felt like a relic himself within these hallowed walls. The academy, centuries old, was now caught in a frantic current, striving for global recognition. He glanced towards the far wing, where the rhythmic, almost militaristic sounds of repetitive stroke practice echoed, drills for the upcoming Golden Brush International Youth Competition. His gaze softened as it fell on Mei Ling, practicing alone in a corner of his shared studio space. Her talent was undeniable, a natural fluidity in her movements, yet her brow was perpetually furrowed. He'd seen her competition pieces, technically flawless, sharp, designed to impress judges with precision. But the shenyun, the spirit resonance that gave calligraphy its soul, was absent, stifled. He knew the pressure she was under, the weight of parental expectation and the academy's ambition resting on her young shoulders. A sharp, modern ringtone cut through the quiet concentration. Lin Mo saw Mei Ling flinch, check her phone, and her shoulders slump almost imperceptibly. Another reminder, no doubt, of the stakes. He sighed inwardly. True mastery wasn't about winning, it was about finding one's voice within the tradition, a conversation across centuries. But that wasn't a metric Director Feng Rui understood. Director Feng, a man whose ambition shone brighter than the expensive Western suit he invariably wore, believed tradition needed to be packaged, marketed, quantified. Success meant awards, funding, international prestige. Lin Mo's quiet insistence on process over prizes, on spirit over spectacle, was a constant, low-level irritant to the director's grand designs. Later that morning, stepping out for a breath of fresh air near the academy's imposing entrance gate, a structure meant to inspire awe flanked by guardian lions, Lin Mo paused. A discordant sound met his ears. An old man, frail and weathered, sat hunched on a low stone bench just outside the threshold, coaxing mournful, clumsy notes from a battered erhu. His clothes were clean but worn, his face a roadmap of wrinkles. He seemed lost in his own world, occasionally muttering fragments of classical poetry between the erhu's squawks. Suddenly, Director Feng emerged from the gate, flanked by two men in crisp uniforms, likely security. Feng's face was tight with annoyance. "Can't you see we're expecting the delegation from the Provincial Arts Council?" he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. He gestured dismissively at the old man. "Get rid of this nuisance. He's an eyesore, bad for the Academy's image. All this clinging to the irrelevant past." The security guards took a step towards the old man, their expressions impassive. The old man looked up, startled, his erhu falling silent. There was a flicker of something sharp and intelligent in his eyes, quickly veiled by confusion. Lin Mo felt a familiar pang. Not just pity, but a deeper sense of wrongness. This wasn't just about image, it was about discarding something, someone, deemed unproductive, unpolished. It was the same attitude Feng applied to art itself. Before the guards could reach the bench, Lin Mo stepped forward. He didn't address Feng directly. Instead, he approached the old man, bowing slightly. "Lao Shan Sheng," he said, his voice calm and respectful, using a polite term for an elder gentleman. "The air is still cool. Would you honor me by sharing a cup of tea inside, where it's warmer?" He gestured vaguely towards a small, less formal side entrance often used by staff. The old man blinked, looking from Lin Mo to the stern-faced director and back again. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "Thank you, young master. Your kindness warms an old heart." He slowly gathered his erhu. Director Feng's face darkened. "Master Lin," he said, his voice dangerously smooth, "I appreciate your sentimentality, but this is highly inappropriate. You are undermining my instructions and potentially embarrassing the Academy in front of important guests." Lin Mo met Feng's gaze evenly. "Director, respecting our elders is also part of our tradition, is it not? Surely the Academy's image includes courtesy." He didn't raise his voice, but his quiet firmness was a clear act of defiance. He turned back to the old man. "Please, allow me." He offered a steadying arm. Feng glared, thwarted but unwilling to cause a larger scene just moments before his guests arrived. He gave a curt nod to the guards, dismissing them, and swept back through the main gate, radiating disapproval. Lin Mo, ignoring the burning sensation of Feng's stare on his back, gently guided the old man, Chen Lao as he now thought of him, towards the side entrance. Mei Ling, who had come out searching for Lin Mo regarding a technical query, had witnessed the entire exchange from a distance, her expression unreadable but troubled. The quiet clash of values hung in the air, thicker than the scent of ink. In the small, cluttered staff room, Lin Mo poured Chen Lao a cup of hot jasmine tea. The old man sipped it gratefully, his wrinkled hands trembling slightly around the porcelain cup. He didn't say much, offering only polite, fragmented thanks. Lin Mo didn't press him, sensing the old man preferred the quiet. After a few minutes, Chen Lao stood bowed again and shuffled out, disappearing back into the Suzhou streets as unobtrusively as he had appeared. Lin Mo watched him go, a strange disquiet settling over him. There was more to the old man than met the eye. He felt sure of it. The repercussions weren't immediate, but they were noticeable. Lin Mo found his advanced class schedule subtly altered, replaced with a larger introductory course, filled with students less inclined towards deep study. During a general staff meeting, Director Feng spoke pointedly about the need for measurable outcomes and optimizing resources, glancing briefly but meaningfully in Lin Mo's direction when discussing instructors who focused on intangible aspects, rather than competition preparation. The message was clear: conform or become irrelevant. Mei Ling sought him out more often now, not just with technical questions, but with a deeper unease. "Teacher Lin," she began one afternoon, hesitantly holding up a practice sheet covered in technically perfect, sharp-edged characters modelled after a famous competition winner. "Director Feng says this is the style that wins. My parents, they call every night. They say the golden brush is my only chance." She paused, tracing a character with her finger. "But when I try to practice the way you showed me, focusing on the breath, the feeling, it's harder. It doesn't look as impressive. But," her voice dropped to a whisper, "it feels different, like the characters are alive." Lin Mo looked at the sheet, then at Mei Ling's conflicted face. He saw the war within her, the desire to please, to succeed by the world's standards, versus the burgeoning connection to the art's true soul. "Mei Ling," he said gently, "the golden brush is one path. Recognition is pleasant, but the path of calligraphy is longer, deeper. What does the brush remember? The prize it won, or the spirit of the hand that held it? Only you can decide which voice to follow." He didn't offer easy answers, only the question that lay at the heart of her, and his own dilemma. He saw her practicing late sometimes, alternating between the rigid competition style and the more fluid, internal approach he taught. The tension in her was palpable. One evening, leaving the academy late, Lin Mo took a less-travelled path along a quiet canal bordering the grounds. He saw a familiar hunched figure sitting on the stone embankment, Chen Lao, his erhu, silent beside him, simply watching the moon's reflection shiver on the dark water. Lin Mo approached quietly. Chen Lao looked up, his eyes clearer tonight, less veiled. He nodded a greeting. After a moment of shared silence, he spoke, his voice raspy but distinct. "Jade buried in stone holds its light within," he murmured, quoting a line from an old poem. "Only the patient eye perceives its true worth." He looked at Lin Mo intently for a moment, then his gaze drifted back to the water. Lin Mo felt a jolt, the words resonating strangely with his own thoughts about Mei Ling, about the academy, about the art itself. He thanked the old man for his wisdom, though he still couldn't quite place the feeling of recognition, the sense of a message intended just for him. Chen Lao merely nodded again, lost once more in his contemplation. A week later, the official announcement sent ripples of heightened anxiety through the academy. The Cultural Heritage Foundation, a major source of funding and national validation, would be conducting its formal assessment visit in 3 days. Director Feng convened an emergency meeting. His usual sharp efficiency was dialed up to near-frenetic intensity. "This visit is paramount," he declared, pacing before the assembled instructors. "Our funding, our national ranking, our prestige. It all hinges on demonstrating excellence. We must showcase our most promising talents, our clear path towards international success. His eyes scanned the room, finally landing on Mei Ling's name on a projected list. Mei Ling's progress towards the golden brush is our strongest asset. She will be the centerpiece of the student demonstration. Ensure she is prepared, flawlessly. The implicit pressure on Lin Mo as one of her primary instructors was immense. The battle lines, once subtle, were now starkly drawn. The assessment wasn't just about budgets. It felt like a judgment on the very soul of the Serene Bamboo Academy. The day of the assessment arrived, cloaked in a nervous formality. The main exhibition hall, usually echoing with the quiet scratch of brushes, buzzed with hushed anticipation. Polished displays showcased student works, predominantly the sharp, technically impressive style favoured in competitions. Director Feng, immaculate in his Western suit, moved among the visiting Foundation delegates with practiced charm, pointing out achievements, quoting statistics. Lin Mo stood quietly near the back, observing. Among the delegates, he noticed one man in particular, middle-aged, dressed simply, with an air of quiet, intense observation. He rarely spoke, but his eyes missed nothing. Finally, the moment arrived for the live demonstration. And now, Director Feng announced, beaming, we present one of our brightest young talents, Mei Ling, who is preparing for the prestigious Golden Brush competition. Mei Ling, please. Mei Ling walked towards the demonstration table set up in the center of the hall. Her face was pale, her hands tightly clasped. She bowed to the delegates, her movements precise but stiff. Arranging the paper, grinding the ink stick, selecting the brush, every action was technically perfect, honed by countless hours of practice. She took a deep breath, the kind prescribed for performance focus, not the deep, centering breath Lin Mo had taught her. She began. The first character flowed from her brush, sharp, angular, bold. Exactly the style Feng had pushed, the style designed to catch a judge's eye from across a room. Feng nodded almost imperceptibly, a flicker of satisfaction crossing his face. The delegates watched, murmuring appreciative comments about her control, her confidence. Mei Ling moved to the second character, then the third. The strokes were flawless, the composition balanced according to competition standards. But Lin Mo could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hand that wasn't there when she truly connected with the ink. She was replicating, not creating. Then, halfway through the fourth character, she stopped. Her brush hovered above the paper for a heart-stopping moment. The silence in the hall deepened. Feng's smile froze. Mei Ling closed her eyes briefly. Lin Mo saw her take a different kind of breath, slower, deeper, settling into herself. Her gaze flickered towards him, just for an instant, a silent acknowledgement. When her eyes opened, something had shifted. She dipped her brush again, but her posture had changed. It was less rigid, more rooted. She began a new piece on a fresh sheet of paper. The strokes that emerged were different, softer, more fluid, carrying variations in ink density that spoke of breath and emotion, not just technical precision. She wasn't aiming for sharp perfection now. She was letting the ink flow, letting the spirit guide the form. It wasn't the golden brush style. It was something quieter, more personal, yet profoundly expressive. She wrote just 4 characters, a line from a Tang Dynasty poem about the moon reflecting in a tranquil heart. They weren't technically flawless by competition metrics. One stroke perhaps a fraction too thick, another ending with a subtlety easily missed. But they pulsed with life, with shenyun. Director Feng took an involuntary step forward, his face a mask of controlled fury. This was disastrous. This was defiance. This was failure in front of the Foundation. He opened his mouth to intervene, perhaps to dismiss her performance as nerves. But before he could utter a word, the quiet, observant delegate raised a hand, a subtle gesture that nonetheless commanded attention. All eyes turned to him. He then nodded towards the back of the hall. A figure emerged from the shadows near the entrance. It was Chen Lao. But he wasn't shuffling or hunched now. He walked slowly but with an undeniable dignity, his worn clothes seeming irrelevant. He carried himself with the quiet authority of a scholar, his eyes holding a calm, assessing light. The observant delegate spoke, his voice clear and carrying in the sudden silence. "Allow me to present Master Chen Jian," he said, gesturing towards the old man. His insights, gathered discreetly over the past few weeks, have been invaluable to the Cultural Heritage Foundation's assessment of this institution. A collective gasp went through the room. Instructors exchanged stunned glances. Director Feng's face went slack with shock, paling visibly. Master Changshan, the legendary, almost reclusive calligrapher and scholar, a man whose opinion carried immense weight in the world of traditional arts. This frail erhu player? Master Changshan stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the room before settling on Mei Ling's work. He ignored the technically perfect competition piece. He studied the second, smaller piece, the one born of her moment of truth. He nodded slowly. "Authentic spirit," he said, his voice quiet but resonant. He looked at the delegates, but his words seemed aimed broadly. "Technique is the vessel, but Shenyun is the water of life. This young lady," he gestured towards Mei Ling, "has shown courage. She chose resonance over rigidity." He paused, his gaze drifting towards Director Feng. "An institution dedicated to heritage must cultivate the roots, not just polish the leaves for display. It must recognize value even when it appears humble," he added, a subtle but unmistakable reference to Feng's earlier dismissal near the gate. "Our traditions are not merely for competition, but for contemplation, for connection." He didn't need to say more. His presence, his identity, and his calm pronouncement delivered a judgment more powerful than any official report. Director Feng stood frozen, speechless, the architect of his own public humbling. Mei Ling looked down at her ink-stained fingers, a single tear tracing a path on her cheek, a tear not of failure, but of release. Linmo felt a profound sense of stillness wash over him. Jade buried in stone, indeed. The immediate aftermath was quiet but decisive. The official report from the Cultural Heritage Foundation arrived weeks later. It didn't call for Director Feng's dismissal. Perhaps Master Changshan preferred correction over retribution, but it contained sharp criticisms of the Academy's narrow focus on competition results and the neglect of foundational, spirit-focused pedagogy. Funding was made conditional on significant curriculum reform. Feng Rui was formally reprimanded and placed under review, his authority significantly curtailed. He was mandated, with biting irony, to co-chair a new curriculum committee alongside Master Lin Mo, tasked with integrating traditional principles more deeply. The sharp suit seemed less imposing now, the confident stride replaced by a more hesitant gait. Lin Mo received no official commendation, but the quiet respect from colleagues and the subtle nod of acknowledgement he received from the observant Foundation official spoke volumes. Master Changshan had departed Suzhou as quietly as he had lived there in disguise, but not before sending Lin Mo a small, hand-written scroll containing just 2 characters. Song. Uphold integrity. It was validation enough. He was asked, formally, by the remaining Academy leadership and the Foundation liaison to take the lead in designing the revitalized curriculum, ensuring the cultivation of Shenyun became central, not peripheral. He found Mei Ling in the courtyard one afternoon, practicing calligraphy not for any competition, but simply for herself. The pressure had lifted from her shoulders. She smiled when she saw him, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Teacher Lin," she said, holding up her work. It was still evolving, still finding its way, but it was undeniably hers, alive with nascent spirit. "I didn't make the final selection for the Golden Brush team. My parents were disappointed at first, but then I showed them this." She gestured to her work. "And I told them, I feel like I can finally breathe when I hold the brush. They're starting to understand." She looked at